Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit unusual. We're sort of tracing quality backwards, starting from the marketplace and going right back to the source.
Exactly. The goal is to connect the dots, between the expertise you need at the retail end and the really meticulous, patient craftsmanship that goes into making a top-tier spirit.
Okay, so we've got a stack of sources,
Yeah.
and we're building this two-part picture for you.
That's right. First up, we're looking at Whisky.dk. Huge scale, incredible specialization, one of Europe's big players in spirits retail.
And then we pivot. We dive deep into the production side, focusing on a single malt they really champion, the Glenrothes, from Speyside.
Right. And the mission here is to understand the why behind it all, the refinement, both in the bottle and how it's presented in the showroom.
Precisely. The why of the quality. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the retailer, Whisky.dk. The sources are clear. Denmark's largest online and physical whiskey store.
Yeah, but that scale, it's not just about volume, is it?
No, exactly. It seems to be about providing this educational, trustworthy experience.
And their physical setup really backs that up. It's not just some warehouse.
Oh, yeah.
They've got this huge 500 square meter showroom. It's near Kolding.
Yeah.
In a place called Vestruprud.
Wow, 500 square meters.
Yeah.
Just for spirits.
Yeah. Think about that space. Dedicated to displaying, storing, selling. It's a serious investment. Shows commitment, right?
Definitely. And what's maybe even more remarkable is how fast they grew.
Uh-huh.
Founded in 2012, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ulrich Bertelsen and Henrik Olsen. Started as a small online thing.
Yeah, just a small idea.
And boom, just over a decade later, they're market leaders. That kind of growth.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen by accident.
No way. That points to some really smart decisions. Inventory, customer service, all of it.
And looking at what they actually sell.
Yeah.
The selection is massive.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what stands out is the breadth and the depth. They aren't just a Scotch shop.
Right.
They've got whiskey from everywhere, Scotland, obviously, but also Japan, Ireland, the U.S., even Danish whiskey, which is pretty niche.
Yeah. And then beyond whiskey, high-end rum, gin, cognac, tequila.
Other exclusive stuff, too.
Okay. But that kind of breadth, that makes me wonder about the expertise side. And the risk, too.
How so?
Well, if you're managing inventory, that diverse single malts next to aged rums, next to artisanal tequila, how do you keep that expert promise alive? It seems much harder than just specializing in, say, easily whiskeys.
Oh, it's a huge challenge. Logistically, educationally, massive. You need staff who are genuinely trained across these really specific categories.
Right.
And you've got the risk of stuff just sitting there, becoming obsolete, or just overstocking, especially with the really high-end exclusive spirits.
So how do they manage that?
Well, a big part seems to be their focus on the customer experience itself, offering tastings, master classes.
Ah, right. The sources mentioned that cozy atmosphere.
Exactly. It's a way to take that complex inventory and make it understandable. Educate people, whether they're just starting out or they're serious collectors.
So they're selling knowledge as much as liquid.
Pretty much. That's what makes them an expert retailer, right? They do the vetting for you. They're kind of the final gatekeepers of quality before it reaches the customer.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's take that quality they champion and trace it back to the source.
To the Glenrothes.
Yeah. We're leaving that bustling 500 square meter Danish showroom and heading, metaphorically, of course, to the town of Rothes, heart of Speyside.
And this distillery, it has some deep roots. Goes back to 1878, James Stewart & Co.
And importantly, the sources stress this wasn't just, a happy accident. No, not at all. The ambition right from day one was explicit. Create a single malt of truly exceptional quality. And that founding mindset, you can see how it shapes everything they still do today.
Definitely. If you boil down their core philosophy, it seems to come down to three key things.
Which are elegance, patience, and, well, the sources use this specific term, sherry pregit finesse. Sherry pregit finesse. Okay, let's translate that a bit. Sherry-driven refinement. Balance.
Yeah, I think that captures it. It points directly to their flavor profile and, honestly, the economic choices they have to make.
Because the Glenrothes is famous, maybe infamous, depending on who you ask for its obsession with sherry casks.
Almost a singular obsession, yeah. Particularly sherry-seasoned European oak. That's their signature, their identity.
Okay, let's really drill down on the wood then.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, that's where the money and the magic kind of meet.
Absolutely critical.
They're using casks seasoned primarily with Oloroso and Pedro Ximénez sherry. Very specific.
Very specific.
So why the focus on European oak? And what's the difference between those two sherry types in terms of what they do to the whiskey?
Okay, so European oak, Generally, it gives more tannin, more spice compared to American oak. It makes it really good for long maturation because it interacts quite intensely with the spirit.
Okay, more structure, more spice?
Then you have the sherry types. Oloroso tends to bring drier, nuttier, spicier notes, thick cinnamon, maybe cloves, whereas Pedro Ximénez or PX, that's intensely sweet. Really deep raisin, fig, dark sugar kind of notes. Molasses, almost.
So they're deliberately using a mix of these casks to build a specific profile. Spicy, but also really richly sweet and complex.
Exactly. Layering the flavors. And the sources make a really important point here. These casks don't just add flavor. They contribute significantly to the natural color. And the distillery insists on natural color. No caramel coloring added.
Zero.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Relying on natural color, which comes from these expensive, high-quality, freshly seasoned sherry casks, well, that puts real commercial pressure on them.
How so?
They just can't cut corners on the wood quality. If they did, the color would give them away immediately. It wouldn't have that richness.
That makes sense. It's a commitment you can actually see. And that commitment to wood is so ingrained, the sources mention this amazing historical detail.
A cooperage.
Yeah. That the Glenrothes actually used to have its own cooperage right there on site for maintaining the casks. It's incredible, isn't it? It just speaks volumes about how they viewed quality control historically.
Totally.
A cask isn't just a box to hold liquid. It's responsible for, 60, maybe 80% of the final flavor?
Right.
So having your own cooperage, that's total control, vertical integration over the most crucial part of maturation. They weren't just fixing leaks, they were ensuring the wood itself was sound, that its life could be extended properly.
Okay, so we have this intense focus on the wood. Now let's shift to the liquid itself. How do they make a spirit that's clean and complex enough to stand up to, decades in these powerful sherry casks without being overwhelmed?
Well, that comes down to the distillation hall. And patience, again.
Patience seems to be the key word here.
It really is. The process is this delicate balancing act. They start with a relatively short fermentation.
Okay, and what does that typically do?
Shorter fermentation tends to leave more of the heavier, oilier, sort of nutty characteristics in the wash, the fermented liquid before distillation.
Right, so potentially a heavier starting point.
Potentially, yes. But then that's immediately balanced by a very slow, carefully controlled distillation, and they use these tall pot stills.
Tall stills, okay. And they have that specific feature, the boil bulbs.
Yes, the boil bulbs.
For someone listening who maybe isn't familiar, why are those boil bulbs so important for getting the kind of spirit they want?
Okay, so the boil bulb, think of it as an engineer's trick to boost purity. It's this bulge high up on the neck of the still.
Right.
What it does is it encourages reflux. That means heavier, less volatile compounds, things you might not want in the final spirit, condense inside the bulb and fall back down into the pot to be essentially redistilled.
So it cleans things up.
Exactly. It increases copper contact and helps separate the lighter, more desirable flavor compounds. So you have the short fermentation creating this flavor potential with those heavier notes. And then the very slow distillation, amplified by the boil bulb, refines it, purifies it. It ensures the spirit coming off the still is clean, elegant, but still complex, ready for that sherry wood.
Making sure it's elegance, not just raw power.
Precisely. It's about creating the right canvas for the wood to paint on.
Okay, that careful preparation.
Yeah.
It leads us nicely into how they actually present the finished whiskey. Because for a long time, the Glenrothes did something quite different. They focused on vintage releases more than standard age statements.
Yeah, that was a really key differentiator for them for many years, releasing a vintage like a Glenrothes 1995 or a 2001.
So what's the thinking there?
Well, when you put a specific year on the bottle like that, you're making a statement. You're saying the character of that specific year's distillation and maturation is unique, it's special, and it's worth highlighting on its own.
So you're prioritizing the specific nuances of that year over, say, blending lots of casks together to hit a perfectly consistent 12-year-old profile every single time.
Exactly. It's about showcasing the year's personality, almost like wine vintages.
But what are the trade-offs there? From a business perspective, I mean. Doesn't that make managing inventory much harder?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what if a particular vintage just doesn't mature quite as well as you hoped? You can't just blend it away into the standard 12-year-old vatting if you're committed to the vintage concept.
That's the risk. Artistically, the benefit is authenticity, transparency. You're celebrating the natural variation that happens during aging.
Okay.
But economically, it's a huge risk. Like you said, you can't hide a slightly disappointing year behind a consistent age statement number. It demands incredible confidence in your quality control year in, year out. Everything matters: the barley, the distillation, the wood, even the weather in Speyside that year.
So the vintage approach is kind of a higher stakes game, a bigger bet on quality each time.
Definitely a higher stakes commitment.
Now, they have shifted strategy somewhat, integrating more traditional age statements into their core range now.
That's right. Which actually gives us a really clear way to see how that wood philosophy plays out over time. It provides concrete examples.
Proof points, yeah.
Yeah.
Not just abstract ideas about elegance and patience.
Exactly. You can literally taste the patience unfolding. The sources give us a nice progression to look at.
Okay, let's walk through that. Where does it start?
Starts with the 15-year-old. Described as, well, elegant and balanced. The core character is there. Notes of baked fruit, spices, dark sugar. Bottled at 43%. A really refined starting point.
Okay, a benchmark. Then you move up.
Then you step up to the 18-year-old, and here you can really feel that sherry influence and the extra time starting to deepen things.
How so?
The flavor profile shifts richer. You start getting notes like dark chocolate, orange marmalade, a more pronounced spiced herb. It's definitely a step up in complexity.
Okay, richer, more complex.
And then you get to the 25-year-old. This is where, decades of that careful interaction between spirit and cask really pay off.
It sounds luxurious.
It is. The description points to deep layers of dried fruit, nuts, spice. You're tasting that profound, slow transformation that happens over a quarter century in that high-quality European sherry oak.
It really showcases the long game they're playing. Now, beyond that core age range, the sources also mention their focus on exclusivity, appealing to the serious enthusiast. Things like the rare limited editions, the 42, the 51.
Right, very high-end, often very old releases.
But what about things like the regional bottlings? The Nordic Edition was mentioned, and single casks. What role do those play?
That's an important part of rewarding the real devotees, the collectors. These regional editions, or single cask bottlings, they're often bottled at cask strength.
Meaning a much higher alcohol percentage, right? Straight from the barrel, essentially.
Exactly. No water added before bottling. And they're designed to deliver the most intense, concentrated version of the Glenrothes style, often showcasing really powerful sherry characteristics from a specific standout cask.
So it's the distillery showing the spirit kind of raw and undiluted.
Yeah, unfiltered, powerful. It appeals directly to that collector who's looking for that unique expression, that real intensity.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. We started with Whisky.dk, this expert retailer, massive showroom, huge logistical operation proving they can identify and curate quality across tons of different spirits.
Right, experts in curation and customer education.
And we traced that standard of quality back to the Glenrothes, a distillery defined by patience, slow distillation, those boil bulbs, and this very specific, very expensive commitment to sherry-seasoned European oak.
The connection seems pretty clear, doesn't it? The retailer's expertise is almost required to explain and justify the producer's patience and choices.
How do you mean?
Well, the Glenrothes, as we've discussed, it's not a loud or aggressive whiskey. It's sophisticated. It's complexity. It rewards you if you pay attention, if you take your time with it.
Right.
It represents Speyside whiskey at its most refined, maybe. And it demands a bit of patience from the drinker, just like the production demanded patience from the distillery team.
So the retailer helps bridge that gap, explaining why that subtlety is worth the price or the effort to understand.
Exactly. They provide the context for that refinement.
So, the big takeaway here, whether you're the one making the spirit or the one selecting and selling it, seems to be about uncompromising quality.
Yeah. Whether it's investing in your own cooperage back in the day or investing in staff training and customer tastings today.
That commitment to quality and the patience it requires seems to be the real engine driving success at both ends.
Absolutely. That patience. Ultimately, that's what you taste in the glass.
Okay, before we wrap up, here's something for you, our listener, to think about, building on those trade-offs we talked about with vintage versus age statements. Imagine if the Glenrothes decided to go back entirely to the vintage release model, just relying on the specific quality of each year, ditching the consistent age numbers like 15, 18, 25.
Okay, a hypothetical switchback.
What kind of impact do you think that would have on their global inventory management, their pricing? Would that heightened artistic commitment, that focus on yearly nuance, fundamentally change how accessible the whiskey is for, the average curious drinker?
That's a fascinating thought experiment. Really gets to the heart of that tension between art and commerce in whiskey.
Something to mull over. So go look deeper. into the source of your favorite spirits, and maybe into the expertise of the people who help bring them to you.
Good advice.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time.